In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a vendor record one at a time, manually, and how to modify that vendor record. We're going to start by going to Master Files. We're going to scroll down and click on Vendor File. I'm going to change the corporation to common because if I have multiple corporations, all of them will be able to access this information. If you only have one corporation, or if you have multiple corporations where each location has their own vendors, then you would not use the common corporation. The vendor code is alphanumeric. I'm going to create a vendor record for Staples, and so I'm just going to use the word Staples. I'm going to come over to the right and click on Add, and then I'm going to start typing the details for the vendor. I'm going to add the address, the city, the state, sometimes the country is important depending on where you're located, and then I'm going to enter the zip code. Now that's the only required information, and the address is not required. As you know, as you can see, the vendor name has an asterisk next to it, but none of these other fields do. Clearly, you're going to want this information in your procurement software. Now, the next step is to add a primary contact if you want to email your POs to vendors. So I'm going to start by entering my name down below. I'm going to enter my email address. And if you want to, you can enter a phone. I'm just going to leave it blank. I'm going to come over here to the right and click on Add Contact. Now, because there's only one contact here, ePMX will automatically identify that contact as the default contact. So what that means is when you create a PO and you're ready to email it to the vendor, this is the contact information that will auto-populate for you in the field. So we also have to come up here if we want this to be an email vendor, and we have to click on the radio button in front of email. ePMX gives us some option. I would choose submit and print and submit an email. Submit and print will give you a PDF copy of the purchase order so that you can save it to your desktop or print it. And submit an email is what's going to generate that pop-up box when you're ready to email a purchase order to a vendor. So I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. Now, you can identify a lot of information in the vendor file. I'm covering in this video the most important items, the most commonly used. You can create terms codes in ePMX, and you can go ahead and you can pull them in. So I'm just going to say net 30 for this particular vendor. And on the additional vendor info tab, if you have the quotations module, you can generate a login for vendors to enter their own bids. But over here, the vendor currency, you can flag this vendor in their own country's currency if they're overseas, if they're international. And down here, acknowledgement required, I would put a check mark here if you want your vendor to acknowledge that they received your order. This will print a message with some asterisks around it at the bottom of the PO so that the vendor is aware. You can also type this in your email communication to them, and you'll see that when we create a PO. You can track some vendor information here in the vendor notes section. As you place orders, you'll begin to see this history totals start to fill in for you. If you flag items in your material file with this vendor as the primary vendor, you will also start to see their product line. I don't have any items in the material file on this site, so it's not going to display for me, but it will just give you a queue. All right, here you can attach items, maybe spec sheets or contracts or agreements or terms documents. This is just stored in the vendor file. And then if you have a contract, each time you pull a contract into the purchase order, you'll see the history displayed in this queue down here. So that's the vendor record. I'm going to go ahead and save it. And now when we create a purchase order, that vendor becomes available for me to select from.